It's been 13 years since the massacre. 13 years since the fire. 13 years since the killing started. 11 years since they stopped. But he hasn't stopped. He's still here, in the deepest crevices of my mind, spreading like the rust of our old bikes, still where we left them. And so I stand here now, on the porch of our old home, now replaced with new wood and a fresh paint job. I stand here now, at the belly of the beast, facing my monster that has haunted me all these years, facing my brother. My name is Liu Woods. The year is 2021. I am currently 27 years old, living in a crammed apartment in Bakersfield, California. I don't get much sleep most nights, and when I do, it's a drunken slumber that leaves me feeling more tired and regretful in the mornings. On nights where I'm unfortunate enough to have neither drugs or alcohol, which is still a drug but we tend to classify them as different things, I am met with the same nightmare. I am surrounded by a pitch blackness for what feels like hours when a surgeon suddenly appears. The surgeon guides me to a hospital bed, and I know, as you do in dreams, that it's time for my important surgery. The nature of this surgery varies from dream to dream. Sometimes I'm getting my appendix or kidney removed. Other times, it's my heart. Nonetheless, I lay down on the red-stained hospital bed and wait for the nurse in red to place the respirator mask over my face. Then, the surgeon removes his mask to reveal a permanent carved smile from cheek to cheek. Jeff's smile. I try to scream but am paralyzed as the surgeon whispers, "Shh. Just go to sleep," as he plunges a knife into my side. Then I wake up, covered in sweat and a poignant sickness that you could only feel after not showering for years. I turn to the bed opposite from me and see my roommate Lucius. I've known Lucius since I was 22. I had moved out of my Auntie Ruth's house a couple years before. Nothing against her, I just couldn't stand to be near family anymore, and was looking for a place to stay that wasn't my car. That's where I met Lucius Gramwell at a local bar. He was a bigger man, with dark skin and a thick black beard. He was around my height, 5'11", and looked much younger. Imagine my shock when he ended up being 3 years older. I tried to ignore that loud man, but when he stood up on the bar counter singing the national anthem, it became a little hard. "Come on, everyone join me," he yelled, much to the dismay of the overworked staff. Everyone ignored him like it was a normal occurrence, and he was left singing on his own. Pitying the man, and a couple drinks in, I made the stupid decision of uttering quietly, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light?" His eyes lit up as he finished the line. "What so precious we held?" He gestured for me to get up from my chair and join him on the counter. I refused, and he was left screaming the rest to himself. After his show was done, he interrupted my solace and introduced himself. I said nothing and simply sipped on my drink. "Come on, don't be like that," he slurred, holding his hand out for a handshake. I begrudgingly took it, and he pulled me in across the table, causing me to spill my drink. I nearly punched this man in the face, but was on parole, long story, and even while drunk, I had the common sense to not cause any more trouble. I did not have the sense, however, to remember the rest of our conversation. All I remember is waking up in a random motel, another long story, with the contact Lucius on my phone. After that, he'd text me at least 4 times a week about random occurrences in his life that did not affect me in the slightest. I never responded to him, but he never got the hint to leave me alone. I considered blocking his number when he sent me a text that he was looking for a roommate, and desperate to get out of my current living situation, I said yes. Based on my account, one could get the idea that I hated this man, and by all accounts, I did. I was never a fan of social interaction after BrookBend, and the thought of having people care for me felt draining. However, as we moved in together, I felt the company was rather nice. Yes, he talked enough to make my ears bleed, but it prevented me from having to hear my own thoughts. I never talked about my past, and he was too caught up in himself to care. It was like a friendship with no strings attached. Something I so desperately needed. Dude, why do you always cover the mirror? I remember Lucius asking me, pulling the black blanket off the bathroom mirror. It helps prevent steam, I responded. Doesn't seem to be working, he said, wiping the steam with his palm in order to accurately apply his shaving cream. Yeah, I guess not. I'm gonna order a pizza. Want anything? Silence. Lucius, I'm ordering a pizza. Do you want anything? But you always put it on. What? I questioned, now peeking my head into the bathroom, seeing Lucius shaving off his beard. He just looked himself in the mirror and continued. The mirror. You cover it whenever you're not in the shower. I choked, attempting to find another excuse. Fine, you got me. I have a fear of mirrors. He chuckled. A fear of mirrors? Is it gonna get you or something? He continued laughing. Maybe, I don't know. Ever heard of Bloody Mary? No. Seriously? Is she famous or something? Your ability to stay under a rock never ceases to amaze me. Sorry, I don't know all of your niche interests. Bloody Mary isn't niche. Everyone has at least tried to play it as a kid. It's a game? He tapped his razor against the sink, then continued shaving. Yeah, you say Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times and she appears and kills you or something. Sounds like a shit game. Well, there's some more steps, but yeah, it was kinda shit. Kids are weird. Yeah. I looked away from the back of his head and turned towards the TV remote. They are... I just played solitaire and stuff. Oh yeah, forgot you had no friends. Hardy har har. He walked out of the bathroom into the living room, which was also the bedroom and kitchen, and showed me his clean-shaven face. What you think? He asked. I didn't even look for 2 seconds before saying, shit. He rolled his eyes and sat down next to me. So, what other scary stuff did you do as a kid? I looked away from him. Don't you have your interview in 5 minutes? He checked his watch, that was behind by an hour. Shit, you're right. He got up. Guess I'll see you tonight. Hopefully not, I uttered sarcastically. Don't lie, you'd miss me if I was gone. Don't count on it. I smiled as much as my mind would let me. He smiled back. Pepperoni. What? Pizza. Order me a pepperoni. I'll heat it up when I get back. I gave him a thumbs up as he walked out the door. I looked back at the bathroom, reaching to close the door. I hadn't looked into a mirror in years. I couldn't. However, there's times when I catch my reflection, either in a freshly cleaned window or a muddied puddle in a pothole. It was always a stranger looking back. I turn back to the TV, surf through channels, turn on some mind-numbing reality TV, and look at the old, dusty suitcase that sat under my bed. BrookBend never truly left me. I've talked to Auntie Ruth, friends, and many therapists. All of them have told me the same thing. Leave it behind. Instead, I left them behind. The second I got out of the sterile hospital, I went straight to the news. I looked for any evidence of my brother and the rot he left in his wake, filling journals with notes and possible clues to where he was. I don't know why I did this. It's not like I had any way of stopping him. I'd print out so many articles to the point where you couldn't tell where the floor ended and the clippings began. Fires, missing persons, unsolved murders. I made connections that weren't there, stringing them together with red yarn like some cliche detective in a movie. Red veins, pulsing, with Jeff's shadow. One thread always stood out to me. Jane Richardson. The red-headed girl who always talked to Jeff in the hallway until, one day, she stopped. She was the only victim of Jeff who was missing. She could still be alive. The one other person Jeff couldn't kill. Maybe, once I found her, I could find what I was looking for. The truth is, I didn't even know what I was looking for. Proof he was still out there? That was already confirmed by this point. Proof I wasn't crazy? I was long past that. Or maybe I was just waiting for Jeff to crawl out of the paper and finish what he started. I remember my third therapist, Rodney, calling it a fixation, a labyrinth of my own design, serving to punish me for things that weren't my fault. I called it survival. It was all I knew. I began shutting people out, letting my labyrinth encompass me completely into a vast silence. And as I walked through the silence, I heard his shrill laughter fill the halls. Rodney had me perform an exercise. He gave me an old suitcase of his and told me to fill it up with every material I had on BrookBend. Then, when I was ready, I should lock the case and toss it into the ocean. He acted like it was some cutting-edge therapeutic medicine. To me, it just seemed like a roundabout way of throwing it away. Still, after much deliberation, I reluctantly agreed. I wanted to be rid of this more than anyone. Maybe this was finally the way to the exit. So, I filled the suitcase until it was overflowing with documents and memorabilia. I listened to the lock click and tossed the key into the vast ocean. However, as I tossed the suitcase into the sea, it floated back to shore, refusing to leave my side. I wanted to scream at the universe, but all that came out was a sigh of resignation. So, now it sits under my bed, salt-stained and collecting dust. I sleep atop a headstone. I started smoking when I was 16. It wasn't because I liked it. I don't think any smoker truly likes the bitter taste of burnt ass or the aroma it brings. No, I didn't like it. I simply chose it because it felt like I could choose the poison that encompassed me, instead of the corn dust, straw mill fumes, and the smell of rot I had experienced in BrookBend. This was my choice. My fault. There were no what-ifs or nuanced perspectives. It was just me, my cigarette, and an old lighter I had found in the dumpster of my work, watching myself turn to ash before I even lived. But it still wasn't enough. I tried weed at 17. I didn't like it. It made me think too much. By 18, I tried acid, by far my favorite of the drugs, but my tolerance built up too quickly and my trips were greatly diminished. By 19, I tried heroin. I don't even remember the first time. Just the way the world folded in on itself, the buzzing silence, the way my chest felt both hollow and full. I chased that feeling for a while, until the chase stopped chasing back. My body protested, but it didn't matter. Every hit, every swallow, every puff hollowed me out until the only thing that mattered was the drug. I remember being behind a dumpster one night and hearing the quick whoop from a police cruiser passing by. "Step up to the vehicle," he said through the speaker. Not having any motivation to disobey, I did. "Any reason you're out this late at night?" The air was moist as a silent mist poured from the sky. I looked up towards the mist as the officer's voice became muddled. The smell of Chinese food filled my nose while the sound of cars passing filled my head. I remember thinking nothing at that moment. Nothing at all. No BrookBend, no Jane, no fire, no murders. Just me. In the mist, in the food, in the cars. For a split second, I was free. Before I knew it, I was searched and shoved into the back of a police cruiser. They found 6 grams of heroin on me. Too much for one person, they thought, but it wasn't enough for me. They stuck me with possession with intent to distribute and tried to get me for 8 years without parole. A bit extreme, I thought, and my attorney agreed. His name was Kyle Perez. There's this stereotype about public defenders that they're not really there to help you and really don't care whether you're found guilty or not guilty. Whether or not this stereotype is true, I couldn't tell you. But nonetheless, Kyle was different. He had this sort of boyish charm about him. Clean-shaven, slick-back brown hair, and crystal blue eyes. He had such a voice that I imagined the snake in Eden to possess. The kind that beckoned you to listen to every word. "I can get you down to 2 years, that I can promise you," I remember him telling me next to the old vending machine in the visiting area. "Great," I responded, unenthused and distracted by the ceiling fan that couldn't seem to keep a tempo. "But I need you to promise me something." "Great." The fan produced this buzzing sound like a fly that wouldn't get away from your ear. "Liu?" I continued to stare at the fan. It had now quickened. Kyle stood up and pulled the cord to turn it off. Cut the drugs. What? I could barely process his words, my mind still reeling from the lack of sleep the previous night. No more heroin. I rolled my eyes. He continued. I read your file. Dead parents, serial killer brother. I leaned back in my chair, expecting another hand-holding kumbaya session. Instead I got, boo-hoo. That's all in the past. You're young, and you have a whole future waiting. Why waste it? I mumbled. I'm not wasting it. What? I spoke up. I'm not wasting it. Really? Yeah. You're 19, looking to spend all your 20s in prison. Sounds like a big old waste to me. I stayed silent. Look, he continued, I've dealt with similar things and... What? You smoked a blunt in college? I scoffed. Cocaine. Shit. I went to Harvard Law School. Everything paid for by my parents. And all the teachers knew my family. Everything was handed to me on a silver platter, yet I still almost threw it all away. Because that's what we do as humans. We self-sabotage. I don't know why exactly. I didn't go to school for psychology. But I think it's that grating thought in the back of our minds that we don't deserve happiness. We don't deserve the life we were given. Every moment of happiness is plagued by the question, why? Why me? Why not them? I don't deserve this. So we attempt to toss it all away. Maybe it's one stupid decision. Usually, it's a lot. He leaned in closer before continuing. But you, Liu, you survived for a reason. Not to OD behind some dumpster. You deserve what you were given because there has to be a reason you were given it. So I'll get you out of this. Only if you promise me you'll go to rehab. I'll pay for all of it as long as you meet up with me once a month. Location is your choice. I didn't even nod or shake his hand. I just held my head down low, but I think he knew I got the message. And he was true to his word. I was sentenced to 2 years in prison and 2 years of parole. And on the 12th year of every month since I've gotten out, we've met up at the Hart Memorial Park. I met her at the bar, at the same bar I met Lucius, the Donahue bar. It was dusty, old, and wedged between an old bookshop and a phone repair shop. It was easy to miss with its unlit sign and unappealing exterior and its revolting interior, warped hardwood floors, yellow-stained ceiling, aged brick walls, and a pool table missing the 8-ball. It was one of those places where you'd seek solace from the rain and never plan to come back. Yet you find yourself there over and over again. I was in that exact predicament on September 23rd, 2015, the day after I got out of jail. I entered the smoke-filled bar, eyes half-lidded and half-dreaming. That's when I first saw her. She walked with a certain confidence that I had not seen from anyone previous or since. Her worn black and white Converse with the words, Jesus Saves, written with black marker towards the bottom. Her pale skin contrasted against her darkened eyes, but the thing that stood out to me most was her hair. Her bright pink hair. How it was the only bit of color I could make out in that entire bar. Can I get you anything, sir? The Mr. Girl asked from behind the counter. Sir, I thought. Had I really looked like a sir? I couldn't have been much older than her. If anything, she was probably older. I guess prison really does a number on people. Or heroin. Probably the heroin. I'm 21, I responded. I don't know why I said that. Perhaps I felt the need to defend myself against something that wasn't an accusation at all. She just looked at me awkwardly and said, I would hope so. Now I feel like I have to check your ID. I laughed, but she just stared. She was serious. I pulled it out and she read the name aloud. Liu Vicky Woods. It's pronounced Liu. She smirked. Vicky? It's a family name. A family name? Is it like your grandma's or something? Yep. Your mom named you after your grandma? She wanted a girl, but had 2 boys. I guess she just settled for the middle name. Well, Vicky, what do you want? I suddenly looked away from her and stared at the chalkboard above with a list of drinks. I wasn't a big drinker around this time and didn't know the exact drinks I liked. All I knew was how much I enjoyed sips from the fruity drinks I'd get from my mother. The problem with that was that I was too embarrassed to say the name of any of the fruity drinks. Can I get the number 4? The what? The fourth one. This isn't McDonald's. What's the name? I mumbled it under my breath. Sorry, what? The nipple twisty? She yelled way too loud with a big white smile on her face. I looked around to make sure no one heard her. That's when I realized we were the only ones in the bar. She laughed. Coming right up, Vicky. So, what's your name? She thought for a moment before speaking. Hannah. Forget your name? She passed my drink. Just been a long day. I took a sip of my sugar-rimmed cocktail. I can imagine. Can you now? Being cooped up in an empty bar is bound to get boring. I just got here. My mistake. So what makes your day so long? She avoided the question. Where'd you come from, Vicky? I avoided the question. This drink has a lot of sugar. Is it twisting your nipples? Ew. Bad joke? Bad joke. She smiled, and I smiled back. There was something about her. Some radiance that surrounded her, pulling me closer. It wasn't necessarily romantic, but more of a fascination. As we talked throughout the night, the fascination only grew. And the most fascinating part of all? Through the 2 hours of straight talking, we never learned a single thing about each other. Never had I been in a conversation with someone that offered me so little substance, yet so much joy. For that moment, we weren't people. We just were. We had no past, no future, just this bar with this drink under this chalkboard. And it was perfect. So, naturally, after her shift, we went back to her motel room, talked, and then slept together. We both agreed it was a one-time thing. One act of intimacy between strangers. 1 time became 2 times, 2 times became 3 times, 3 times became 4 times, and eventually I stopped counting. Yet, we never grew closer. At least I didn't think we did. It was more like a second job. Clock in and clock out. And we both saw it as nothing more. We both saw it as beautiful. 6 years into this routine, on August 12th, I met up with Kyle Perez for one of our monthly meetups. It was weirdly cold for August, so we met up at a coffee shop instead. I was never a fan of coffee. A part of me is convinced that no one likes coffee and just pretends to in order to seem cool. Maybe it was all one big charade. Kyle started. How have you been? I've been good. Keeping busy. Oh? With what? I got a new job, flipping pizzas. He wrote something down in his small white notebook. That's good. What are you writing down? I gave a nervous chuckle. No matter how long I knew him, I always got incredibly awkward around him. I think it was his posh demeanor with his too good slick back hair. Maybe it was the way he talked, speaking to me like I was a student in his class. Still, he was a good man, and I did enjoy his company. It was a nice change of pace from Lucius. This guy actually asked me questions. He responded, Nothing. Just remembered some... His phone rang, interrupting his words. Sorry, it's my sister. He took the phone call and simply said, I'm right across the street. Just take my keys and unlock it yourself. He hung up and waved his hand at a blonde woman across the street. She waved back and walked towards the door in her black and white Converse. Ever since I was a child, I have always been fascinated by film. I loved every genre from sci-fi to horror to action to romance. Each one always breathed new life into me. However, the film that always fascinated me the most was Hacksaw Ridge, starring Andrew Garfield. This isn't because I'm a war film fanatic or am obsessed with its cinematography, no. What amazed me most was how out of all the impossible acts Desmond Doss performs in that film, it is still toned down from the original story. This is because director Mel Gibson believes that the real-life events were too crazy to be believable for most audiences. This insane notion that fiction had to be believable where real life did not. This would be one of those moments he would have cut from the script. Written on her Converse were the words, Jesus saves. And suddenly, her face became recognizable. It was Hannah, or, as I came to learn, Susan Perez. Why did she lie to me about her name? I don't know, and I frankly didn't care to ask, for I had made no effort to know her. How could I see this as betrayal? Her hair was neither the bright pink I had met her in, nor the bright blue or green I had seen her wear before. It was a dirty blonde, her natural hair. When she saw me, she was shocked, but hid it much better than I did. She simply took his keys, gave me a slight smile, and then walked out of the cafe. I thought that seeing her like this would ruin something for me, that now I knew too much and the illusion would end. However, while it did change my perception of her, my attraction only grew. That night, around 11 p.m., I knocked on her motel door. She answered, eyes tired, blonde hair disheveled. She rubbed her eyes, surprised to see me there so late. "Hey," she said through grogginess. "Hey." "It's late." I couldn't sleep. I gave her a half smile. "Mind if I come in?" She moved out the doorway. "Sure, just don't mind the mess." This is messy. I looked around the nearly spotless motel with the only bit of trash being some old ramen noodle boxes sitting atop the trash can. You'd have a heart attack if you saw my room. She chuckled to herself. "Oh, I can imagine." She sat down on her bed, facing me. "So, did you need something?" "Company." "I'm sure you could find someone better than me." All semblance of past confidence was gone, replaced by sunken eyes and greasy hair. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, but I felt like asking her would break some unwritten rule we had between us, that we weren't meant to talk about anything above casual conversation. So I just kept talking. "So, should I call you Susan now?" She sighed. "I'm really sorry about that. It's just... I cut her off. "It's fine. I understand." I really didn't understand. Why go through all the trouble of hiding your name and nothing else? Yet, I knew that, given the circumstances, I would have done the same. And in the same situation, I wouldn't be able to explain myself either. She gave me a half-assed smile. "Thanks. It's my middle name." "What is?" "Hannah. It's my middle name, so I didn't completely make it up." We both have some weird-ass middle names. "Yeah." An awkward silence enveloped us as we both stared at each other, as if we were trying to read the other's mind, but always stopping before we actually broke through. This was her. This was Susan Perez. I didn't ask anything. She didn't either. Instead, she stood up, walked over to the tiny motel fridge, and pulled out 2 cans of cheap soda. She tossed me one without looking. We cracked them open at the same time, the sound echoing too loud in the silence. For the next hour, we talked about nothing. Bad movies, the weather, her theory that all vending machines are portals waiting to open, my theory that pigeons were just FBI agents on a lunch break. It was stupid. It was pointless. And it was exactly what I needed. Then, as we got to the bottom of the last can, she broke the fiction. "Where do you come from, Liu?" she asked, no tone found within her voice. I paused a moment before responding. "I'm from here, California." "No, you're not." I let out an awkward laugh. "What do you mean? Do you need me to pull out my birth certificate?" "No, I don't mean where you were born. I mean, where do you come from?" I'm still not getting it. You may have been born here, Liu, but it's like, let me think how to say this. It's like your head is in the clouds. No, somewhere else." We baked in another long stretch of silence before she interjected again. "Sorry, I didn't mean to make it awkward. I was just curious." "Indiana." "Indiana?" "I lived in BrookBend, Indiana, for about 2 years." Didn't think 2 years of your life could matter so much. I played with the broken off bottle cap. "You've never been to BrookBend?" "Never heard of it." "Figures. It was one of those shitty small towns you'd pass by to get gas or something like that. It literally only took you 20 minutes to get from one side to the next." "Isn't that more of a village?" "I don't know the difference." "Me neither. But I like small towns. They're very cozy. Until you live in one and the only thing you can do is go on walks and reminisce." She laughed. "I'm sure it wasn't that bad." Trust me, it was worse. Me and my brother would. I didn't know you had a brother. I stared at the ceiling fan above us, spinning in that same inconsistent tempo as the one in the prison. Yeah, Jeff. We remained silent for a minute longer before I began chuckling to myself. Susan, confused, asked, "What's so funny?" Nothing, I'm just remembering something. Carried a chair with the class. I lay down on her bed, torso facing the ceiling, as I smiled and recollected the moment. Jeff and I would always ride our bikes to school, until some kid stole them. We tried to get them back, but a kid popped Jeff's tire and, anyway, my dad wouldn't get Jeff a new tire, so his bike was basically useless. So, one day, Jeff and I went to this ditch behind our house that was filled with water, and Jeff said, "Hey, Liu, I bet I can hop over this ditch with my bike." And I was like, "Bro, your tire is flat. You're not making it." And then we bet $50 on it. He, of course, didn't make it and fell straight in, getting soaking wet, and I began laughing, trying my hardest to continue. I looked to my side and saw Susan staring at me, lost in every moment of this stupid story. I continued. Then we put double or nothing if I could make it, so obviously I took the deal and face planted straight into a rock. I was bleeding across my forehead and our mom was so pissed. I still have the scar. I lifted up my hairline to show her. She just smiled. "Seems like you were quite the duo." Yeah, we were. "So what happened?" He he died in a house fire 13 years ago. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to pry or anything." "No, it's okay. I don't mind." I wish I had stories like that. My brother was always studying while I was doing cool shit, like ruining my life. "Looks like it all worked out in the end." She gave me a deadpan glare before lying next to me. "I own a shitty bar and live in a shittier motel while my brother is a lawyer and owns a house." "What you mean is you own your own wonderful establishment and are living in a minimalist lifestyle while your brother is a little nerd." She smirked. "Sure." We looked at each other and stayed like that for the rest of the night. There were no words, no kissing, no touching, no sleeping together. Just the sweetness that I could only find in her auburn eyes. And within this sweetness, I found that I had loved her. I was surrounded by an infinite darkness. The air was still, with the only movement being my chest as it went up and down, up and down. I walked across the dark visage, the floor moist like an old flooded basement. Then the surgeon appears. His head tilted, his eyebrows raised, and his eyes squinted like there was a slight smile under his damp surgical mask. He held out his hand, inviting me to sit on the hospital bed that had suddenly appeared. I was a spectator in my own body as I sat, a red liquid squeezing out of the bed as I did. Not water, but too thin to be blood. The nurse in red grabbed my shoulders and pulled me into a lying position. He pressed the respirator mask firmly into my face. The surgeon pulls out a rusted, dull, black butterfly knife. He removed his mask to reveal his grotesque smile, carved, outstretched, and covered in dry blood and scabs. He leaned into my ear and whispered, through burning breath, "Shh, just go to sleep." I prepared for the inevitable plunge into my side, but instead, he handed me the knife, his smile never leaving. The nurse let go, and without hesitation, I took the knife from him. He just stared at me in cardinal fascination with his animalistic eyes. As I stared into them, I felt this poignant rage consume me. I let out this yowl that I can never hope to recreate, and I tackled him to the ground. He just stared and smiled as I wrapped my left hand around his neck and prepared to plunge the knife with my right. Then, I woke up. I was in the motel. I was with Susan. I was on top of her, one hand in the air, grasping nothing, and another around her neck. She was still asleep. Upon this realization, I jolted back, falling off the low mattress. This woke her up. "What are you doing?" she asked, still half asleep. I tried to get back up, but fell once more. This prompted her to get up, rub her eyes, and look at me. My face was highlighted by the rising sun outside the window. I can't imagine what she would have seen, but whatever it was, it morphed her face into a horrified expression. "What's wrong, Liu?" She was wide awake now. "Nothing, I just have to go." "Are you okay?" I just really have to go. Tell me what's wrong." I couldn't look at her. I just got up and ran out the door. I got into my car and sped down the empty road. I couldn't go back. I wouldn't go back.